This is Fat2Fierce. Welcome to the Confidence Chronicles. I'm your host, Amy English. Join me on this empowering adventure towards a healthier relationship with food, body, and self, one delicious bite at a time. Hello. Happy Thanksgiving. This episode is going to be live on Thanksgiving Day in the United States. So if you're celebrating today, I hope you're having a great holiday. This is episode number 45 of the Confidence Chronicles, and I'm your host, Amy English. In today's episode, we're going to talk about willpower because forever, willpower has been this thing that I really felt very ick about, okay? Maybe you can relate. Well, I realized just this week, thanks to a meditation that I was listening to in the workout program that I have called Supernatural. Listen, if you have Supernatural, it's one of those VR workouts, the VR headset workouts. If you have it and you listen to the meditations, I'm going to invite you to listen to the one from November 11th called Willpower, okay? Because this blew my mind. And I'm a life coach who's been doing this work for a long time, all right? But I thought when I first heard this meditation, because I've listened to it several times now, when I first heard this meditation, I wanted to bring it to the podcast. I wanted to talk about it. But I needed to give myself a couple of days to kind of let it sink in because I wanted to be able to articulate it in a way that is helpful. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to reframe how we think about willpower. Because listen, if you're anything like me, I always felt icky about willpower, similar to how I used to feel about self-discipline. Okay. Self-discipline was always one of those words and ideas that I was just like, nope, checked out. Like, we're not going to talk about self-discipline because it always felt like punishment. It always felt like cruel, like not helpful, like more harmful, right? But I created a reframe for self-discipline. So instead of thinking about it as punishment, I now think about self-discipline as honoring my commitment to myself. Like that's my own personal definition of self-discipline. And it's been very helpful for me over the years, right? There's been a huge benefit to reframing the way that I look at self-discipline. And listen, if that's helpful for you, then I invite you to borrow that as well, right? Self-discipline is merely honoring the commitment I make to myself. Period. That's it. Okay. Well, guess what? We can do the exact same thing for willpower. We can reframe it. We can create a new definition, a new way of looking at it, a new perspective around willpower. I always thought of willpower. This is going to sound weird. This is the part that I'm trying to articulate, okay? But I've always thought of willpower as like an action, like something I need, right? It always felt very forceful, like white knuckling it, right? And I can remember so many times in my life, especially when I was in my serial dieting phase, right? Like nonstop dieting, yo-yo dieting. I can remember so many times saying things like, I don't have enough willpower. I just don't have enough willpower to say no to that cake, right? Or I need more willpower. I need more willpower. I don't have enough. It was a very lack mentality. And quite honestly, it was an excuse to give up, if I'm being brutally honest, right? The fact that I didn't have enough willpower or I needed more was like a perfect excuse for me to say, oh, I don't have enough willpower. Okay, I'll go ahead and have a piece of cake. All right. I'm just being honest with myself here, okay? And listen, if this resonates for you, then that's okay, right? Once we learn and we understand ourselves better, that's when we can really start to make some significant changes. So anyway, that's how willpower always felt to me, like this thing that I needed more of, this thing that I didn't have enough of. And this very kind of like way of forcing myself to do something, of white knuckling it to the next step or the next goal. just really not helpful. And so as I started my coaching journey and as I started my own personal journey through Fat2Fierce, because let's face it, the program I created is the one that I went through personally, right? As I was going through that, I kind of just put willpower off to the side. Okay. Just not going to rely on willpower because it wasn't helpful the way that I was looking at it. Right. So I just decided not to use it. Kind of like motivation. So motivation is great and motivation is really helpful in the beginning of starting something, but we don't rely on motivation to keep us going. It's not intended to be that way. Motivation is great to get us started, but we don't want to rely on it. I mean, none of us are designed to be motivated 24/7. Like that would just suck, quite honestly, right? So I kind of just pushed willpower off to the side and was like, I don't need that. I'm not going to rely on it, which is kind of why my initial reaction to the meditation that I mentioned was, ew, I'm not going to listen to that. Right. Okay. Well, here's the deal. How can we reframe willpower in a way that is actually useful to us? Okay. Helpful, not harmful. Here's the gist of that meditation that I listened to this week. And yes, I have notes today because again, this is really fresh for me. So I'm sharing it on this episode. Like, well, it's still new, right? Well, it's still new for me. So bear with me on this one. All right. Okay. Willpower. So remember, I mentioned it felt more like an action, like more like something that I needed, more like something like I needed to do, right? So willpower is not about controlling your actions, okay? But it is about willing your thoughts in the direction you want to go. It's about your thoughts. It's about the sentences in your brain. Do you remember before we talked about the difference between fat mentality and fierce mentality? That's going to come into play here. Okay. Fat mentality is those harmful thoughts that we think about ourselves, our bodies, and food. Fierce mentality are the thoughts that are helpful, that help propel us to the next step. Okay. Willpower is coming into play here. Okay. We're going to look at that in a very similar way. So it really is about willing thoughts. Okay. Willing your thoughts in the right direction so that the actions follow. Because one thing that we know is that our thoughts will absolutely dictate our actions. Okay. Now, depending what school of thought you follow, doesn't matter who you listen to, there's a number of people out there who are providing the same information. The one thing we know is that whatever we're thinking, our thoughts are going to lead us to the action that we take. So when we're thinking thoughts that are helpful, okay, thoughts that are supportive, thoughts that are more compassionate, chances are we're going to start taking the actions that we want to take, the actions that feel good, that feel better. Now, there's also feelings in there too. So again, depending what school of thought you follow, there's your thought, the thought that you're thinking, that thought generates a feeling, and then that feeling leads to an action. Okay. Now, it can also go feelings, thoughts, actions. I mean, there's different ways of looking at it. But at the end of the day, what we know for sure is that whatever we're thinking, the thoughts that we're thinking is absolutely going to determine either the action, the inaction. Okay. So either the action we take or the inaction being the thing we don't do, right? Or our reaction, the way that we respond to something. So of course, it's super important to pay close attention to what we're thinking, the things that we're saying to ourselves, the sentences that are scrolling across our brain every single moment of every single day. And y'all know it doesn't stop, okay? Little side note here. I remember back in the day before I ever discovered meditation or any of the more alternative type therapies that I've dabbled in over the years. When I first learned about meditation, I used to get so frustrated because I couldn't quiet my mind. I really thought that in order to successfully meditate, I needed to stop all thoughts. I needed to be able to quiet my brain completely and not think anything. Okay. Guess what? I was wrong. That's not how you meditate. We can't do that. It's not possible to completely shut our brains off from all thoughts. We're human beings. We have brains. They produce, I think they say the average person thinks approximately 60,000 thoughts a day. That's 60,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts, right? We're not going to shut them off. I remember someone once telling me, well, maybe the Buddhist monks know how to shut their brains off, know how to stop the thoughts. But as average humans, we just don't have that capability. And that was actually refreshing. And that was helpful information because now I know that when I do meditate, I can expect the thoughts to be coming. It's fine. It's not a problem. And the other piece of this is good information because knowing that the thoughts never stop, it is imperative that we as humans learn to manage our brains. And that's what life coaching is all about. All right. Life coaching is all about understanding the way that you're thinking, understanding the thoughts that are crossing your mind, because chances are those thoughts are the obstacles that are getting in the way of you achieving whatever it is you want to achieve. All right. Thoughts will impact actions. Let's look at an example. Okay. So let's say you want to stop emotional eating. Let's say you want to stop stress eating. All right. That's a common one. Okay. So you have this really rough day at work. You're super stressed out. Like, all the things are happening. It's one of those days that just goes sideways. Right. And you are just like, hand over the cookies and nobody gets hurt. Okay. So you're going to eat some cookies. You're going to eat some sweets. You're going to have something that's going to help you feel better in the moment. And then you think to yourself, I did it again. I suck. I can't. I have no control. I have no self-control. I can't do this. I am never going to get there. I am never going to be able to stop stress eating. I'm just not going to be able to do it. I have a problem. This is a problem. What happens when you're thinking that? How do you feel? You feel terrible, right? And listen, I'm pulling this from my own personal archives, okay? I remember days like this. And I remember feeling terrible. Like I was never going to be able to stop stress eating. Of course, I was never going to be able to stop stress eating if I kept telling myself I wasn't going to be able to stop stress eating. What we think about, we bring about, okay? The more we keep focusing on what we don't have or what we can't do or what we don't do or like how we don't accomplish anything we say we want to accomplish, the more we're focusing on that and telling ourselves that and talking to ourselves that way, the more we're going to keep bringing it to fruition. The more that's going to keep happening. Okay. So instead, we want to pay attention to the way we're thinking, the sentences that we're thinking, the sentences we're saying to ourselves, because those are all thoughts too. Okay. Food voices. Guess what? The food voices are thoughts too. All right. So constantly thinking about food, constantly wondering when you're going to eat next, constantly thinking about the leftovers in the refrigerator that you cannot wait to go and eat, right? Constantly thinking about the ice cream that's sitting in the freezer that you just want to go downstairs right now and grab a spoon and plow through, okay? Food voices are thoughts. And the more you can sit and recognize them and realize that they are just thoughts and not directives, like you don't have to go and do the thing you're thinking about doing, the more you learn to manage your brain. This doesn't mean you get rid of negative thoughts, okay? I mean, that's the bad news in this, all right? We can't get rid of negative thoughts. Human brain is just not designed that way. There's always going to be there, like you're always going to think negative thoughts. I mean, I get them daily, constantly. It's just I get to choose whether I'm going to I get to choose what thoughts I'm going to allow to take root. Okay. So I can recognize negative thoughts and I can decide in the moment if I'm going to let that thought live and breathe and take root in my space, or if I'm going to reframe it, if I'm going to change it. if I'm going to think of an alternative. Okay. And this takes practice. This is something that is definitely learned, and it takes effort. And sometimes my negative thoughts win. Okay. If I'm being brutally honest, I'm a human being who happens to be a life coach. But now, like back in the day, my negative thoughts always won. That's all that was, I would say 95% of my thoughts were negative and they were all consuming. Now I would say it's probably more of a 70-30 split, meaning 70% of my thoughts are either neutral or helpful, positive, where there's still like 30% that still come in and infiltrate. Okay. Like you're just not going to get rid of them. They're going to happen. But how amazing is it to know that we can learn to manage our brains and change the thoughts that are not helpful? Okay. I think that was a whole side rant, but that's okay. We're going to keep going here because we're talking about willpower. And this is all part of it, okay? And here's what I started thinking as I was listening to this meditation about willpower. Okay. So think of willpower as like a source within you. Okay. When I think of this, the image that comes into my mind is like a well, like a water well. Okay. So it's this source of whatever you envision, right? Within you. So instead of using it on actions, so instead of using the source of willpower on the actions that you want to take, okay, and the things you want to do, use it on your thoughts, okay? Because your thoughts, as we've just described, will lead to your actions. So you're going to use the source of will to help with the things that you're thinking. So when negative thoughts come, as I just explained, because they will, notice them. Don't let them take root, but use it as an opportunity to reframe what you want to be thinking about. Okay. Willpower can actually work with us. We can work with it. It doesn't have to be against us. It doesn't have to be this negative force. And here's a really cool analogy that I found to be super useful. Okay. So using willpower in our thoughts as a GPS. Stay with me here. And also, we're going to do a little visualization exercise at the end of this. So I hope you'll stick around for that. Okay. Think of a GPS. Okay. We use them every day, right? When we're going someplace, we need directions. We plug in the address, and then the GPS gives us all the steps that we need to take, leading us to our destination. All right. So think of it this way. Your goal, whatever goal you're working on right now, that's your destination. Okay. So that's the address that you're going to plug into your GPS, wherever it is you want to go. Okay. Maybe it's to stop stress eating every day, or maybe it's to, I don't know, remove 20 pounds, or maybe it's to get the next promotion, exercise more, drink more water, whatever your goal is. All right. That's your address. You want to plug that into your GPS. The directions, the steps that are going to come are your thoughts. This is your willpower. So your thoughts are the directions that are going to guide you towards your goal. And think about it this way. If your thoughts are clear and positive, you're going to get accurate directions that are going to take you right there. But if your thoughts are more negative or scattered, chances are you're going to end up lost and getting rerouted. So the more negative and unhelpful or harmful that your thoughts are, or more scattered, like all the overthinking, okay, that's going to keep us getting lost and rerouted. It's going to take us longer to get to our destination, to get to our goal, versus if the thoughts are more clear, even neutral, okay? clear, neutral, positive, those are going to ultimately help us get to our destination so much quicker. Why were we never taught this in grade school? Like, this is like a really valuable question I'd love to know the answer to. All right. But this, again, this is one of those things like once you learn it, once you see it, and once you realize it, like once you know it, you can't unknow it. And so then you get to decide if you want to then take the steps to implement this into your life. I mean, I was what, 40 some years old when I learned all this life coaching stuff. Like, yeah, really, it's really been like the last decade of my life that I've immersed myself into personal growth and knowing myself better and understanding, how I work in this world. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, could you just imagine if we were taught this as kids, how incredibly powerful it would be? Like your thoughts, the way you think is going to determine how easily, quickly, efficiently you get to your goals. And listen, if you're feeling a little skeptical about this, try it. See what happens. What do you got to lose? If anything, you're just going to feel better, right? So, yeah. Willpower. Using this GPS analogy and deciding what we're going to think. And I love that this really does go with the whole car analogy, because one thing I always say about Fat2Fierce is it really is about you taking the wheel on your journey, right? So instead of being a passenger or being in the back seat or heck, even being in the trunk and thinking that food is running the show, like, no, it's about you taking back the wheel and realizing you're in charge and you're in control of your personal journey. And now you got a GPS to help you. Look at that. Isn't that fascinating? So, when you change your thoughts, your actions will follow and your goals will just feel more achievable. Okay. Willpower isn't about forcing yourself into action. It's about setting the right mental directions to make the journey easier. Yeah. So let's take a few minutes and do a little visualization together. Okay. Now, if you're driving or you're busy, just listen and reflect. But if you're in a calm place, feel free to close your eyes and take a deep breath. Okay. Let's begin. First, just visualize your goal, whatever it is that you're working on. Think about a goal that you really want to achieve. Maybe it is feeling more at peace with food or exercising more or just feeling better in your skin. Okay, feeling better about yourself. Just picture your goal clearly in your mind, whatever it is you want to achieve. Just whatever comes up for you, picture it. And then imagine what it would look like to have achieved this goal. Like, how do you feel knowing you've achieved it? How do you feel in the moment? Are you feeling calm, happy, proud, excited? Maybe a little lighter, as if the weight of self-doubt has been lifted? Really just take a moment to feel what you're feeling when you've achieved this goal that's been so important to you. Just breathe it in, sit with it. And then identify the current thoughts that you have around this goal. Whatever you're thinking, whatever thought, because chances are some of the doubt's going to start to creep in, okay? Think about the thoughts you've been having around this goal, okay, that you've been working on. Are they helping you or are they holding you back? For example, okay, again, the goal, you know what the goal is. What have you been thinking about it up until this point? Have you been thinking, I'll never get there? Or it's too hard for me? Or maybe I don't have enough willpower? Haha, okay. Don't judge those thoughts. Judgment is not going to help, all right? Just notice them. Notice the thoughts. These are the thoughts. Whatever thoughts are coming up for you right now, whatever thoughts you've been thinking about this goal, these are the steps that have been guiding your actions, whether you realized it or not. Okay. These have been the directions in your GPS. Okay. And now we're going to play with shifting them. All right. We're going to use willpower. Okay. To focus on the thoughts, not the actions. All right. So now we want to reframe these current thoughts with more empowering thoughts. So if your thoughts are like the directions on a GPS and the current thoughts that you have are leading you in circles, getting you lost, having to get rerouted, it might be helpful to write them down, okay, so that you see them on paper, so that you know. Again, as long as you're, in a space where you can write something down right now, write them down and ask yourself this question. What is a thought that feels kinder and more helpful? So instead of I'll never get there, or it's too hard for me, or I just don't have the willpower, maybe a better thought, a better feeling thought is I'm learning. I'm improving a little every day. I deserve to feel good in my body. I'm proud of myself for trying. Okay. You want to choose one that feels better, feels more empowering, and feels true. Okay. That's key here. When you're coming up with a new thought, it's got to be believable. All right. It's got to feel as true or more true than the negative thought. Okay. So you want to choose a thought that feels better and continue to repeat it in your mind. All right. Let that thought be the next step in your GPS. Let that guide you to where you want to go. Fascinating, isn't it? Just think about the GPS. Just think about when you get the directions for the destination. Okay. Visualize your goal as the destination and all the steps that come. And each of those thoughts, whatever they are now, has been turned around to a more empowering, better feeling, believable thought. And then visualize arriving at your destination, like your goal, and feeling the pride and the joy of knowing you got there by thinking differently, by trusting yourself, because that's another big piece of this. Okay. This is going to require some self-trust, which is also a huge part of overcoming emotional eating. Okay. And learning to feel comfortable in your skin and love your body. Okay. So, but by trusting yourself and by staying committed to the journey, allow yourself to feel that in this moment. How does that feel? Pretty amazing, right? Knowing you can trust yourself. I'm going to invite you, however you're feeling in this moment, knowing that it is your new thoughts that helped you get to this goal, to get to this destination, however that leaves you feeling right now, which again might be happy, excited, proud, joyful, whatever it is. Just sink into that feeling. I like to tell my clients to bottle this up. Okay. Bottle up this feeling. You're going to want to remember what this feels like so that you can tap into it again in the future. Because guess what? There are going to be moments when you get discouraged. There are going to be moments when you feel doubt. There are going to be moments when you feel frustrated and overwhelmed. But you can absolutely tap into this feeling. Go back to the new directions that you're going to create, okay? The new steps that you're going to create, and really pay attention to how you feel when you're thinking them. Bottle it up and return to this as often as necessary and see how it helps, okay? So bottle up that feeling so that you can return to it at any time that you need to. That is most important. Okay. Before we wrap up this episode, take a deep breath and anchor this feeling. Remember this: your thoughts are your directions. Anytime you feel stuck or overwhelmed, Practice the pause. Can you see how all this stuff is related, friends? Practice the pause, check your GPS, and choose a new thought that leads you toward your goal, not away from it. I hope that this has been helpful for you today. And remember, as with anything, as with overcoming emotional eating, creating a new exercise routine, working on anything that you're working on, it's practice, patience. Got to keep going. There's no light switch that just automatically changes the stuff, okay? The whole key is that you keep practicing and notice how changing your mental directions makes the journey to your goals so much smoother. Notice I didn't say easier, okay? It might be easier for some, but it will definitely make it smoother. All right. I hope you have a great week. See you next time. Are you ready to break free from stress eating and body shaming? It's time to get fierce. Fat2Fierce is a self-paced program that helps you build a new foundation of strength and balance without the toxic dieting mindset. This non-diet approach focuses on mindful eating, body acceptance, and lasting transformation. It's time to reclaim your power and find peace with food, your body, and yourself. Visit amyenglishcc.com to get started today.